date is November 20th, 1820. You are standing on the deck of a 238-ton wooden ship, thousands of miles from land, perfectly, completely isolated in the dead center of the Pacific Ocean. The water is as smooth as glass. The sun is blinding. You are holding a harpoon. You are a whaler. You are the apex predator of the 19th century. You track the largest animals on Earth, drive sharp iron into their flesh, and boil their fat to light the street lamps of the civilized world. You fear nothing in the ocean, but suddenly the water a few hundred yards off the bow begins to boil. A shadow rises from the deep. It is a sperm whale, but it is not like the others you have hunted. It is monstrous, 85 feet long, covered in white scars. Usually when a whale sees a ship, it dives. It runs. This one doesn't run. It turns its massive, block-shaped head directly toward you. It floats there for a moment, analyzing the ship, and then it lowers its head, pumps its massive tail, and charges. It hits the solid oak hull of your ship with the force of a freight train. The wood splinters, the ship shudders, and as the cold Pacific water rushes into the lower decks, you realize a terrifying truth. You are no longer the hunter. You are the prey. If you think the story of Moby-Dick is a work of fiction, you are wrong. It is based on a true story. But the real story doesn't end when the ship goes down. That is just the prologue to a nightmare of starvation, madness, and unspeakable horror. Here on AG Chronicle, we document the moments when the arrogance of man is swallowed whole by the wrath of nature. Every subscription, every like, helps us read the logs of the doomed and the damned. Now step into the lifeboats, because the ship is at the bottom of the sea, and the civilized men of Nantucket are about to find out what they taste like. To understand the tragedy of the whaleship Essex, you have to understand the ego of the men who sailed her. In 1820, the island of Nantucket, off the coast of Massachusetts, was the wealthiest community in America. It was the Saudi Arabia of the 19th century. Instead of drilling for crude oil, they hunted whale oil. It lubricated the machines of the Industrial Revolution and lit the homes of the elite. And the men who harvested it were treated like rock stars. The crew of the Essex were arrogant. They believed they had a divine right to conquer the ocean. The ship was commanded by Captain George Pollard, a 28-year-old first-time captain. His first mate was Owen Chase, a 23-year-old hothead who was ruthless, ambitious, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. In August 1819, the Essex sailed out of Nantucket. Their mission was to sail around the tip of South America into the remote Pacific, fill the hull with 2,000 barrels of oil, and return incredibly rich. But the ocean warned them to turn back. Just 2 days out of port, the Essex was hit by a massive squall. The ship was knocked entirely on its side. It nearly sank. They lost 2 of their small hunting boats. Captain Pollard wanted to turn back and repair the ship properly, but first mate Owen Chase argued against it. He said turning back was cowardly. It would cost them time and money. Pollard backed down. They sailed on. It was the first in a series of fatal, arrogant calculations. A year later, the Essex is in the offshore ground, a patch of the Pacific Ocean thousands of miles west of South America. It is the most remote place on planet Earth. They had been slaughtering whales for months. The process was brutal. When they spotted a whale, the men would lower small, fragile rowboats. They would row right up to the back of the massive creature, drive a harpoon into it, and hold on for dear life as the panicked whale dragged the boat across the ocean. A terrifying ride they called a Nantucket sleigh ride. When the whale was exhausted, they would pull up close and stab it through the lungs with a lance, letting it choke on its own blood. They saw whales merely as swimming bags of cash. They did not believe an animal possessed intelligence, memory, or vengeance. November 20th begins like any other day. A pod of whales is spotted. The 3 small whaleboats are lowered into the water. Owen Chase is in one of the small boats. He harpoons a whale, but the animal thrashes violently and its tail smashes a hole in Chase's boat. Chase is forced to cut the line. He rows his damaged, leaking boat back to the main ship, the Essex, to make repairs. Captain Pollard and the other men are miles away in their small boats, continuing the hunt. Chase climbs aboard the Essex and starts hammering canvas over the hole in his small boat. Then he hears a shout from the rigging. An 85-foot bull sperm whale surfaces about 100 yards from the Essex. Owen Chase looks at it. He notes that it is acting strangely. It isn't swimming away. It is lying motionless on the surface, its massive head pointed directly at the ship. Suddenly, the whale spouts water, dives shallowly, and accelerates. It rams the ship. The 238-ton Essex violently shudders. The men are thrown to the deck. The whale passes underneath the hull, scraping along the bottom. It surfaces on the other side, stunned by the impact. Chase thinks the whale was just confused. He orders the men to start the pumps. The ship is taking on water, but then the whale turns around. According to Owen Chase's own terrifying account, the whale seemed seized by a sudden, calculated fury. It thrashed the water into a foam with its tail. It locked its eyes on the bow of the ship, and it charged again. This time, it wasn't an accident. The whale hit the bow with twice the speed, completely crushing the heavy oak timbers. The ship instantly begins to sink. Having delivered the fatal blow, the massive whale simply turns and swims away, disappearing into the dark blue water, never to be seen again. Chase and the men on board have exactly 5 minutes to react. They grab whatever navigational tools they can find, a few casks of water and some hardtack bread. They jump into the small damaged whaleboat just as the Essex rolls over. Miles away, Captain Pollard sees his ship disappear. He rows back furiously. When Pollard arrives, he finds Owen Chase sitting in a small rowboat, staring at the floating debris of the Essex. Pollard asks in a voice trembling with shock, "My God, Mr. Chase, what is the matter?" Chase replies, "We have been stove by a whale. There are 20 men. They are in 3 small, open rowboats. Each boat is about 28 feet long. The sides are only an inch thick. They are in the exact middle of the Pacific Ocean." Captain Pollard pulls out the surviving navigational charts. They have a terrifying choice to make. The closest land is the Marquesas Islands or the Society Islands, about 1,200 miles to the west. With the trade winds blowing in that direction, they could sail there in a few weeks. But the arrogant men of Nantucket have a prejudice. They have heard rumors that the natives of those islands are cannibals. If we go west, Owen Chase argues, we will be eaten by savages. So Captain Pollard makes the most disastrous navigational decision in maritime history. To avoid the cannibals, the civilized men of Nantucket decide to sail south, against the wind, to catch a different current that will take them to the coast of South America. A journey of over 3,000 miles. They choose the open, barren ocean. They choose starvation. Within a week, the true horror of their choice becomes apparent. The sun is a blistering, relentless laser. The men have no shelter. Their skin blisters and peels. Their rations are tiny, 2 ounces of hard bread and a half pint of water a day. Then a wave hits Owen Chase's boat. It ruins their bread, soaking it in salt water. If they eat the salted bread, it will dehydrate them faster. But they are starving. They eat it anyway. The salt accelerates the madness. Their lips crack and bleed. Their tongues swell until they cannot close their mouths. Men start drinking their own urine to survive, but it only poisons their failing kidneys. After an agonizing month at sea, a miracle appears on the horizon, an island. It is Henderson Island, a tiny uninhabited coral atoll. The men drag themselves onto the beach. They find a small freshwater spring and devour birds and crabs. But within a week, the 20 men completely strip the tiny island of all its food. The island cannot sustain them. They have to get back in the boats. However, 3 men, William Wright, Seth Weeks, and Thomas Chappell, look at the endless, terrifying ocean. They refuse to get back in the boats. "We will take our chances on the rock," they say. The remaining 17 men get back into the 3 boats and push off into the Pacific. In January 1821, the 3 boats become separated in a storm. They will never sail together again. The rations run out completely. The men begin to die. In Owen Chase's boat, a man named Richard Peterson dies. They say a prayer and roll his body into the sea. But a few weeks later, in Captain Pollard's boat, the situation crosses the moral event horizon. When a young sailor dies in Pollard's boat, the starving men look at the corpse. They do not say a prayer. They do not roll him into the ocean. To avoid the cannibals of the Marquesas, the men of Nantucket become cannibals themselves. They cut the meat from their friends' bones. They roast it on a small fire built on a bed of sand at the bottom of the wooden boat. They eat it. For weeks, this is how they survive. When a man dies, he is butchered and eaten. But by early February, in Captain Pollard's boat, there is a horrifying problem. Nobody is dead yet, and they are completely out of meat. The men look at each other. They hold a desperate, terrifying council. They agree to an ancient, unspoken law of the sea, the custom of the sea. They will draw lots. One man will be killed so the others can live. A second lot will be drawn to see who has to be the executioner. They tear a piece of paper into slips. They put them in a hat. Captain Pollard closes his eyes and pulls a slip. A young sailor named Charles Ramsdell pulls a slip. The slip with the black mark is drawn by Owen Coffin. Owen Coffin is 18 years old, and he is Captain Pollard's first cousin. Before the voyage, Pollard had sworn to Owen's mother that he would protect the boy with his life. Pollard is devastated. He screams, my lad, if you don't like your lot, I'll shoot the first man that touches you." Pollard offers to take the boy's place, but Owen Coffin shakes his head. He accepts his fate. "I like it as well as any other," the boy whispers. The second draw is made for the executioner. The executioner is Charles Ramsdell, Owen Coffin's best friend. Ramsdell weeps uncontrollably. He refuses, but Owen Coffin rests his head on the gunwale of the boat. He tells his best friend to do it. Ramsdell raises a pistol to his best friend's head. He pulls the trigger. The civilized men of Nantucket butcher the 18-year-old boy. They eat his flesh, and they suck the marrow from his bones. On February 18th, 89 days after the whale sank their ship, an English merchant vessel called the Indian spots a small boat floating in the Pacific. It is Owen Chase's boat. When the British sailors look down into the boat, they recoil in horror. The survivors are not human anymore. They are skeletons wrapped in sun-baked skin. They are covered in sores, and the floor of the boat is littered with human bones. 5 days later, an American ship called the Dauphin spots Captain Pollard's boat. When the rescue ship pulls up alongside them, Pollard and Charles Ramsdell do not wait for help. They do not even look up. They are huddled in the bottom of the boat, fiercely gnawing on the bones of their crewmates. They are so consumed by the trauma and the madness of starvation that they actually fight the rescuers who try to take the bones away from them. Out of the 20 men who left the Essex, only 8 survived. Owen Chase's boat, Captain Pollard's boat, and the 3 men who had chosen to stay behind on the barren rock of Henderson Island were rescued months later. The third boat was never found. It vanished into the vastness of the Pacific. When Captain George Pollard returned to Nantucket, he had to walk up to the house of his aunt, knock on the door, and explain what he had eaten. He was given command of one more ship. He wrecked that one on a reef too. He spent the rest of his life as a night watchman on the streets of Nantucket, a broken ghost walking the foggy cobblestones. Years later, a young sailor named Herman Melville met Captain Pollard. He heard the story. He read Owen Chase's published account, and he wrote Moby-Dick. But Moby-Dick ends when the whale sinks the ship. Melville knew that the true horror of the Essex was too dark, too gruesome, and too ironic for a 19th century audience. Because the ultimate tragedy of the Essex wasn't the whale, it was the hubris of the men. Remember the choice they made right after the ship sank? They chose to sail 3,000 miles to South America to avoid the Marquesas Islands because they feared the natives were cannibals. Modern historians and anthropologists now know the truth. By 1820, the native people of the Marquesas had been in contact with European traders for decades. They were not cannibals. They were peaceful. If the Essex survivors had sailed west, they would have been welcomed, fed, and saved within a month. Their own arrogance, their own prejudice, and their own belief that they were the only civilized men in the world drove them straight into the most barbaric act imaginable. They ran from an imaginary monster, only to discover that the real monster was sitting in the boat with them the entire time. Thank you for watching AG Chronicle. If you believe that the darkest chapters of history hold the brightest lessons, hit that subscribe button. We are reading the logs of the damned, so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.